education and advocacy. Our mission is to empower voters and defend democracy. The Know Your City series has been ongoing for a number of years and seeks to help community members understand the hows and whys of various aspects of city government, which is part of our education mission. Before we start, I'd like to mention a few upcoming league events. February 6th is the second Know Your City, Getting Around Corvallis, Improvements to the City's Multimodal Transportation System. If some of you probably logged in last night for the Sustainability Coalition's webinar on multimodal transportation featuring ODOT and OSU. And so this would be a really nice complement to that. This will be in person here at the library and also via Zoom. The starting time is 6:30, and you can check the website for details and to get a link. On February 8th, there's a housing committee meeting at 2 p.m. And then on February 12th, the community planning committee meeting at 4:30 p.m. February 13th is a board meeting at 6 p.m. And these are all Zoom meetings, open to anyone who wants to come. So check the website and find the information about how to attend those. The League's annual Soup Social and Priority Setting meeting is February 14th at 6 p.m. It's here in the library. The board is providing a soup supper for this one, so you don't even have to have dinner before you come. And then the last announcement is, remember the library closes at 7. Doors to the parking garage get locked. If you're parked down there, you might want to go move your car. So on to our program. I just want to read something from the City of Corvallis budget page. The annual budget is the city's financial plan containing estimates of revenues and expenditures. In addition to allocating resources among departments and community programs, the budget also governs the city's spending authority and encourages community feedback and participation. So tonight we will explore how this budget process works and answer some of your questions about it, and also explore how best to interact with the process. We do have some handouts at the back and also a page with a QA code on it that you can shoot with your cell phone that takes you right to the League website, and you can access those handouts in color on the website and also get more information about the programs that I just mentioned. So our moderator tonight is City Councilor Tracy Yee, and I'm going to turn the program over to her.
Thanks, Connie. Okay. Hi, my name is Tracy Yee. I am the Ward 8 City Councilor, and I love my. Okay, so I know what I'm saying. I'll be moderating tonight. I will be introducing the panel in just a second, and I'll be taking the questions from online and in the room. And with that, I will introduce our panel. So from left to right, from the way you're looking, we have Curtis Wright. He's our former budget commission chair, and like many times over, not just once, right? How many years were you the budget commission chair?
I think I was chair 9. I think 11. I'm currently chair of the county's committee.
Okay.
And been there about 6 or 7 years.
And I
So-
still haven't learned to use a mic.
He's only been the past budget commission chair for Corvallis for 9 or 11 years or something like that. You might know it. The gentleman in the middle with the tie is Mark Shepard. He's our city manager. And to your right is Tony Cadena. He's the city councilor for Ward 9. So according to my agenda, I'm going to have Mark Shepard go over the flow chart thing. Did everyone pick up a copy in the back? He's going to walk you through that and kind of take you through that. And I think for the folks online, was it an attachment, something they can follow along at home? I hope. I don't think we have it projected, so we'll have Mark do that. And then once we've kind of done an overview of the whole budget process, we'll have each of the members of the forum kind of talk about more about their background with the microphone and their role on or with the budget. So with that, Mark, do you want to go ahead and talk through the?
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Councilor Yee. And thanks for having us here tonight to talk about the budget. Hopefully we'll be able to provide some good information and answer questions that you have. Before I just jump into the flow chart and the budget process, I do want to give some context. I think that's helpful, larger context regarding the city's budget. First, Corvallis is in a relatively healthy financial position. And that's something that doesn't happen by accident, and it's something that we shouldn't take for granted. If you pay attention to what's happening in the city of Salem or Eugene, they are going through processes where they have tens of millions of dollars in shortfall. And so they're having difficult conversations about either cutting services or trying to find revenue to make up for that shortfall. So we're very fortunate here, and as I said, that doesn't happen by accident. That happens based on good planning, good decisions, and at times difficult decisions. So I've been city manager since May of 2015. And as I started, one of the goals that the city council had set was to develop a plan to be more financially sustainable. And there was a task force that was formed and worked for almost 2 years. Wright was on that task force. Ultimately, that work resulted in what we called the three-legged stool for some additional, identifying additional revenue. Those revenue sources were renewal of an operating levy, which we just went through that election recently. And we're very fortunate to have significant community support. That operating levy supports parks and recreation opportunities and work. And then the second leg was city service fee increases, and those service fees were adopted to support both of our public safety arms, police and fire. And then the third leg was the implementation of a county-wide service district for 911 services. So essentially our emergency dispatch. The city runs that dispatch for the district. The payments come into the county and the city operates that. So that really did provide us a good three-legged stool to address issues that we had, not only general sustainability of operations, but to address some shortfalls we had specifically in public safety, both in police and fire. We've been able to staff up to address many, not all of those issues. So again, we're very fortunate to be in the position we're in, and we're not here talking about drastic cuts currently. I will say the issue of expenses increasing at a higher rate than revenue is something we are always fighting, and one that we need to continue to think of, look forward and have discussions, whether those discussions are about additional revenue or reductions or change in service, or try, and on the revenue side, it's not always just about more fees, but how do you grow the base of those who pay those fees? Another thing about the city, we have very little debt, and that's a good thing, but there's also a flip side to that, which I'll get to in a bit. But we are, again, the recipients of good, proactive planning and difficult decisions that city councilors have made in the past. On the flip side, when I came here in 2015, I was really surprised to find what I would term neglect of planning and saving for general business operations for the city. What do I mean by that? Talking about things like large software replacements or hardware replacements. There was not a proactive plan in place for that. There was not a proactive plan for saving, for maintaining the facilities we have. Generally, we've done a good job of saving for replacing equipment such as vehicles, but certainly not our facilities. So in addition to just maintaining our facilities, there really had been no planning for how do we deal with the changing dynamic of our employees the needs that they have, the increased number of employees we have as the city grows to deliver services, and the aging of our facilities. And many of you hopefully have heard conversations about facilities. One thing to remember also, as we address issues about revenue, there are limits to the levers the city can pull, what options we have for funding. Certainly there are limitations placed on us by the state constitution regarding property tax. Other options that we have brought to bear are city service fees. And one of the advantages to city service fees is we have many or several large landowners in our community who don't pay property taxes. And so a service fee allows us to bring them into the equation and help pay for the services that they enjoy, that we provide. And then I spoke about the levy. That's an operating levy that has to be reviewed and renewed every 5 years. Maximum length of a levy is 5 years. And then an option that the city has not pursued in recent years is also general obligation bonding. You're all familiar with the bond measure that the county put forward last spring that was not successful. You're familiar with the school district that had the $200 million bond measure. But those are generally for capital improvements. A couple other things to think about as we talk about budgets, as we talk about the impact of increases in costs on our community members, which we are very sensitive to. It's interesting to note, Corvallis has what's called a permanent rate, what we're allowed to charge for property taxes. And every city in Oregon has a permanent rate that's set by state law. I won't go into all the history, but Corvallis's permanent rate is $5.11 per $1,000 of assessed value. Now, there are cities in Oregon that are less than $1, $2, fairly low. But if we look at our neighboring cities, Albany's base permanent tax rate is $6.40 per thousand. It's 25% more than we have here in Corvallis. Eugene, $7.01, 40% more than we have here in Corvallis. A couple other cities that are closer to us, Lebanon, $5.14, Philomath, $5.30, and Salem, $5.83. So while none of us enjoy writing that check out for our taxes, we actually are not taxed at an extremely high rate per assessed value compared to many of our neighbors. It's also good to remember that's the city rate. We also all pay taxes to support Benton County and the school district. So your tax bill, obviously, as you look at it, it's broken out. It goes to pay for many services across different agencies. And as I said earlier, we also have that challenge of Oregon State, the hospital system, that large landowners that aren't paying property taxes. I will also mention that we have our operating levy. Other cities have operating levies also to augment their services, and they have general obligation bonds. So that just gives you some background and perspective. So now let's get to the flow chart. And again, I hope you all have picked up a copy. And I'm just going to walk through it briefly here. When people think about the budget, mostly our minds go to the bottom of the chart, down where we're actually getting in through the approval process. And there is state budget law dictates how we work through that process. We impanel a budget commission. That budget commission consists of the 9 city councilors and 9 citizen members. And by state law, the budget officer, who in Corvallis, that's the city manager, is obligated to present a balanced budget to the budget commission. And the budget commission holds meetings with city staff where we explain the services we're providing through that budget. We explain any major changes regarding the budget and answer questions that Budget Commission members have. The Budget Commission then holds a public hearing, gets feedback, ultimately recommends a budget to the council. So again, most of the focus is down at the bottom of the flow chart. Excuse me, just a moment. But there's certainly a lot of work that goes in to getting to those Budget Commission meetings and ultimately council approval. And I guess I should give you calendar. Budget Commission generally meets at the beginning of May, and the council is asked to approve a budget in early June as our fiscal year starts July 1. So leading into that process, how do we get there? First of all, we don't start with a blank slate each year. Unless we're given some other policy direction by the city, staff develops a budget that generally continues delivery of services that the council has identified as their priorities. Council sets policy priorities and staff identifies the resources needed to move those forward. And so unless given different direction, we are continuing that business direction that we have. And so again, we're not starting from a clean slate. But there are a couple policy documents that do potentially change or modify how we deploy the resources we have. One is the strategic operational plan. You see that on the left side. That is relatively new here in the city, probably 6 years old maybe. And that is a 5-year plan in which the council sets policy priorities, staff identifies actions and objectives to get those policy priorities moving forward and completed. And that work really helps us as staff identify what do we need regarding staffing or other assistance to move those actions forward. So that is certainly a big driver in how we deploy the resources that we have. So how does the SOP as well get approved? Again, 5-year plan, but it's reviewed every year. And the general cadence, this year it's a little later, but the general cadence is that staff will develop an updated draft in which we identify what projects have been completed or maybe rescheduled and what new projects might be put out in year 5 or because of some other change is somewhere else in the SOP. So staff presents that, excuse me, staff presents that to the council in a work session. Council asks questions, absorbs it, and then we hold a second work session with the council in which the council can ask additional questions, give different direction, and also update any of those policy priorities that they might want to change or highlight, which might change some of the actions that staff is going to undertake. So we've had the first meeting with the council, with the staff presenting the draft, and upcoming just next week, we'll be having the second meeting with the council to hear their feedback. We do take community comments throughout the whole year. There is a form that is active and live throughout the whole year. The comments that we receive will be included in the packet that's sent to the council for the February 8th conversation. So that's one of the legs there that helps drive the information for the budget. The other is our capital improvement. program. That's on the right-hand side. As it says, that really focuses on capital investments, whether that's, I apologize about my voice. Whether that's water infrastructure, sewer infrastructure, streets, parks, airport, facilities. And that is a 5-year planning document, what we anticipate based on needs and anticipated revenue, what we plan to build, what infrastructure, what capital improvements we might undertake. Ultimately, the first year of that CIP is adopted into the budget, and those projects are then funded in the budget. That CIP also goes through an annual review where staff will update it, again, based on revenues. Maybe projections for revenues have changed, and so we don't think we're going to be able to do some projects that we had planned. Maybe a grant comes in and we're able to do something we didn't have planned. So how does staff come up with those projects? We have master plans that are developed through a very public process here in Corvallis, which identify capital improvements that we need to do in our different infrastructure areas. So that's a big driver for those projects. Another driver is just experience that we have. If we're seeing failure of water lines, sewer lines, streets, we try to plan for addressing that in a timely manner. And it's a complicated dance oftentimes. If you think about a street project and you say, well, let's just go, that street looks awful, we need to pave it. There's questions about when the best time is to invest that money in the pavement. There's also questions about what about the infrastructure that's under that pavement? Is the water line sound? Is the sewer line sound? Is the storm line sound? Or do we need to address that? Because the last thing we want to do is come in and rebuild a street, pave it, and a year later, dig it back up to fix something. So staff is doing all those sort of dances and working through those details. That's then presented at a joint meeting of the council and the budget commission. This year, that meeting is planned for March 21st. We'll take public input on the CIP year round, and that information is included in what is provided to the council and certainly can also inform staff's decisions where an issue we may not be aware of comes to light. So those two policy documents have different ways for you to engage. And those are the places really to be effective where you want to engage with the council, with staff. By the time we get to budget commission meetings in May and budget approval in June, there's a lot of work that's been done, a lot of decisions that have been made. And while I will stop short of saying you can't change the budget, it's not as easy as you might think of, hey, just add this project in, because there's a lot of dominoes that fall if you're moving funding from one project to another, if you're moving resources from one effort to another different priority. So the most effective place to get your input in is early in the strategic operational plan conversations and the CIP conversations. As I said, input for that is live year round. And so while the focus is really during those times of approval and review of SOP and CIP, you come up with an idea, you can send it in, we will capture that. So I think just based on my voice, I'm going to stop there now. I hope that's been helpful. I'm sure I've missed some key points. I'm happy to answer questions or try to clarify things.
So, thanks, Mark. What I'm gonna do now is kind of go down the line again and ask you each to talk about, your role on the Budget Commission or with the Budget Commission. And Kurt, I'm gonna ask you to talk about what the role of the chair of the Budget Commission is, now that Mark's kind of given us the overview. And you can talk about all of your experience. Sure, and then after we get kind of the background and the role of each member, the reason this panel was chosen is so they can represent kind of a citizen member, a city staff, and a city councilor. Then we'll open it up to questions, and we'll be taking questions from online or and in the room. So Kurt, why don't you go ahead and start?
The chair of the Budget Commission doesn't vote, except in the matter of a tie. And the chair of the Budget Commission is responsible for making sure that all of the members of the commission, the councilors as well as the citizen members, get their questions answered. They have the opportunity to ask questions of the budget officer, and when the department directors come and speak, to ask questions of them. They also can request information from the city staff. If from the city staff's perception, it is easy to supply that information, it is done very quickly, and it goes out to all of the budget commissioners. If the request being made by a particular budget commissioner is, that's going to take days, weeks, months to get that information together, then we, as the budget commission, take a vote on whether or not we want the staff to do that. And the majority vote will decide whether that particular request is met or not met. It potentially could be met the following year in terms of what it is. The budget chair also makes sure that the commissioners follow the state law with regards to what we're doing. And that is that during the entire period of time when the budget message is presented and the budget are presented by the budget officer, and we have all of these hearings with the departmental staff, we're not pontificating, we're not making opinions, we're not deliberating, if you will. We don't do that until we hold the public hearing. And we have the public hearing and we hear from the public first and foremost. That's another avenue of input. And then when we close the public hearing, then is when the commissioners debate, discuss, deliberate, decide what it is we want to do about the budget as it has been presented. I do want to point out a couple things that at the League of another state, another time, at the League of Oregon Cities website, there is a budget overview document on Oregon local government. And I would like to, if I may, share with you the things about what the Budget Commission does and what it does not do. Okay. The Budget Commission officially reviews the proposed budget documents. It allows the public to ask questions and to comment on the budget. It approves the budget with all the funds in balance, and it approves the maximum amount of property tax. The Budget Commission does not set staffing levels, salaries, benefits, or contract terms. And the Budget Commission does not decide whether or not a service or a program should be provided. And the Budget Commission does not make policy. All of those responsibilities, actually the first one belongs to the city manager. The last two, deciding whether or not services or programs should be provided and making policy, are the responsibility of the elected officials, the city council. And we just get to, the Budget Commission is basically, it's not quite an advisory body because we actually do make a decision, but we recommend the budget and we recommend the tax rate to the city council. The city council has the final decision. In terms of times when citizens can make input.
Sure.
The first and best time is in November when there's a city council election. If you really want to influence what happens in the community, it's the 9 people that get elected to the council. And then once they are elected, you can continue to talk with those councilors. Emails, meetings, phone calls, showing up for the community comment section and session of every council meeting and making your wishes and concerns known. Here at the library, every Saturday, I believe, there's a government corner and a different counselor is here. You can come and talk to someone who is not your ward counselor, but the other ward counselors and make those concerns and needs known. You can get more involved in the city and you can serve on the advisory board for Parks and Rec and for the Budget Commission and for Climate Action Board and for the library and all of the city services. They can volunteer to do that. But talking, you know, if you really want to, if you're really concerned about the city's priorities based on where the money is spent and how it's spent, your real avenue of achieving something is in conversations with the folks who would like to be your counselors and conversations with the folks who are your counselors.
Thank you.
In the speech.
Thank you. Thanks, Kurt, for those comments. So my name is Tony Cadena. I'm counselor for Ward 9. It's my first term. I think when I sit on the Budget Commission, I kind of feel like I wear 2 hats. The first hat as a member of the Budget Commission is speaking to some of the things that Kurt raised, is to ensure that we have a solid budget process. That is, that we have a process in which we have put together this, that is, the city staff have proposed a budget that is in balance, that the fund balances make sense, that we follow our financial and fiscal policies, that we have completeness in the process. So I feel like I wear 2 hats as a counselor and as a Budget Commission member. As a Budget Commission member, it's really a lot about the process. Do we have a solid budget? Does it reflect our ongoing plans? As Mark had indicated, we do have a strategic operating plan that is a multi-year plan. We have a capital improvement plan. Are we delivering on those promises over time? What adjustments do we need to make? Is there has this budget been put together in a manner that is consistent with the fiscal policies and puts us in a good position to execute? So that's kind of the process hat, which is what I view as in my role as a budget commissioner. In my role as a counselor, I care about a number of things as well. I participate in all of these processes. We're going through the strategic operating plan now. We'll be doing the capital improvement plan. There's community input, et cetera. I know one of the things that I'm very keen on, my background is finance. To Mark's earlier comments, we have put in place many of these tools, the goal being that we create a financially sustainable future for the city and do that in the most responsible manner possible. And to that end, I think what's important there is we pay attention to, at a policy level, what I'm looking for is several things. One is, what is our plan going forward? Not just this coming, the budget year that we're working on, but out into the future. Where are we going with revenue, meaning fees, taxes, local option levy, any number of revenue tools? As Mark mentioned, we are fortunate in having been very conservative in borrowing. That is a tool that, used judiciously, makes a lot of sense and allows for great impact at a local level. Used injudiciously, cities have gotten themselves into trouble. So I think that is another policy decision that we need to look forward when we think about the future. Certainly growing our economic base is something that is also important for us. as a city, we would like to grow our economic base in a manner that makes financial sense, ideally such that we create growth in our economic base that allows the burden on our ratepayers to be diminished because it's spread across a larger base. Having one of my undergraduates is economics. There's a great phrase in economics quote that says there are no solutions, there are only trade-offs. And so I think that is really a challenge. There are many times that I've had folks come to talk to me at Government Corner, and I will get, don't you think this is a good idea? And of course, the classic economist joke is that when you ask an economist, what do you think about this? The answer is, well, compared to what? So that is likewise, I think when we think about the budget, we have lots of priorities and lots of good ideas. And we have to go through and understand what does the community want from how does council implement that as policy for where we spend our funds. So I think that's another aspect of longer range planning and financial planning. And that's why we have things like the capital improvement plan and the strategic operating plan. So in my role as a budget commissioner, I'm interested in the process side. And in my role as a counselor, I'm interested in how do we further the objectives of the city in a fiscally responsible manner, and what do all of the input and changes and updates to the plans, how does that impact us from a policy point of view, and how do we address those big policy issues?
Okay, well, did you want to say about being the budget officer? You kind of feel like you.
Yeah, so I obviously work with staff. I don't develop the budget on my own. Work with department directors, and they work with their managers and supervisors. I will say every year, the requests for staffing or projects, there are literally millions of dollars of requests that I cannot approve. We don't have the funding for. And these are legitimate requests. It could be additional staffing to deal with state or federal mandates that have come down, and now the city has to do some more work. And yet we're not afforded any more revenue there. It could be as simple as we need money to maintain facilities in our parks because we don't have a revenue stream for that. So again, I have the enviable job of having to tell department directors, no, we don't have funds for that. Very fortunate in that we approach this as a team. Originally, when I got here, fairly siloed, and many departments didn't know what other departments were asking for or what they were approved for on budgets. And we have a team now where we look at what does the city need, and it may not meet the need for a specific department director, but they understand the bigger picture and they understand that we have to prioritize. So very fortunate with that as we develop that budget. So again, the budget that comes forward is one that is missing a lot of needs and requests that are coming from staff to be able to continue to deliver services or respond to issues that arise for us. I think I've probably said enough.
Okay, well, we're gonna kick off some questions. We have some really good ones. I'm gonna start with one. We got a couple that are really similar. So it's basically, you mentioned there's the form online to submit suggestions. So both of these questions are about if a citizen makes a suggestion on a CIP or SOP, how do they know if the city will act on their suggestion or not, other than waiting until the final draft is out? And this one's similar. If they do the public input form, once it's submitted, who receives it? What happens to it? Who considers it? And then does the person who submitted it receive it?
Yeah, so that is one thing we've talked about being a little better as far as how do we, if people send something in, did it disappear into the ether? Did the city actually get it? It really is not practical for staff to answer every single input. We don't have the time to do that. We are looking at trying to at least provide feedback of, yeah, your information has been received and it'll be forwarded on to staff and council. Ultimately, with both the SOP and the CIP, we provide all that feedback, that raw feedback, to the council when they go through that process. So again, the council packet for February 8th that'll come out tomorrow will have, I think we received over 100 inputs regarding the strategic operational plan. So every one of those will be in there. You're not going to see us respond to every one of those, but the council will have that. If there's a specific theme or issue, certainly staff takes note of that, and I know the council does also.
Did either?
Can I answer?
Sure,
Go ahead.
Tony.
So just a comment. So there are, I just wanted to say, as a city councilor, I do read each and every comment that comes in, regardless of how it comes in. And I think that's probably true for virtually all of our councilors. So I think that's something to know. At the same time, I know one of the items that we will be talking about when it comes time to talk about the strategic operating plan is something I've been working with the public information officer, and Mark's well aware of the thoughts I have on this, which is many times in comments that come in from the public, there are certain themes. Mark mentioned themes that come out. I think we might be able to do a better job at strategic communication around those themes. So that is something which maybe each and every comment might not get an individual reply, but there might be themes that are pulled out that we could probably improve on communication. And I don't think I'm going too far by saying that that's something that we'll be talking about.
I was just gonna comment that when there are 153 comments that come in that all say something about we need to do a better job about reducing bicycle thefts and car break-ins, I would assume that the city council and the chief of police and the city manager all say, well, you know, this is something that we need to look into and think about and do. What do we need to do? Is there something that we can do without spending any more money to do it? Or do we need to spend more money? And if so, where are we going to get that money from in order to do that? And conversely, if it's we need to do a better job of making housing possible in this community. And there are 7,000 comments that come in and say that once again, I think that if that was down here at number 9 on the priority list, I would imagine that the city council responding to what it is the community says, this is what we care about, that those priorities move up the list. Yes.
Yes.
Okay, all right, let's move on. Okay, I can alternate between online questions and in the room questions. So this next one came from online. Could the panel discuss the rationale for scheduling community comments at the very last budget commission meeting? Is the city considering changes to the timing of community comments about the draft budget? I don't know who wants to take that. It's like Mark's one for it.
Yeah, we recently received the city council received some input regarding that and considering taking public comment at each and every budget commission meeting. Again, that's it's kind of a process issue for the budget commission to work through and what works best for them. Is that possible? It certainly is. I'll leave it at that.
From the standpoint of sticking to the meeting agenda, that's, you know, there's probably no reason why you couldn't have public comment every time. You just have to adjust how much time we have going on for everything else on the agenda, or are the meetings gonna be another half hour longer, another hour longer in terms of where they are, in terms of trying to pay attention to everybody's time on it. The budget commissioners can hear anything, and people can do that with emails and with letters, as well as actually showing up in person and making comments. And that information comes through continuously. We can't do anything about it. We can't comment on it until we get to the point of having the official public hearing. And that's the first time when legally we're able to begin to discuss and deliberate about everything we've heard from the staff and from the community, and then begin to make decisions about how might we change something in the budget if we're going to, but usually what it is for the budget commission, frankly, is do we want to move a little bit there, which we're going to move from over here, or ask staff, well, if we wanted to move something here, where would you want to take it from? And then if there is a motion made to do that and it is seconded, and then we have a discussion and deliberations on it, and then we have a majority vote. And either it happens or it doesn't happen.
Kurt, that's actually a good seg. I have a question from the room. And the question is, can you give an example of a time that the Budget Commission enacted a change in the budget as a result of public input?
The biggest thing that I can remember in time, and it was when the first idea of creating a city service fee came up. And it happened to be at the Budget Commission meeting when we moved into that public hearing and then closed the public hearing. Coincidentally, we didn't have all 18 members of the commission there. A number of the city councilors, for whatever reason, weren't there. So there was a motion made to not enact service fees, and it was seconded, and it passed. The city council has the right to make the final decisions, and so when all 9 city councilors got together at their city council meeting, they said, well, let's look at this. And that, as we well know, city service fees are a way of life. That's one of them.
Okay, thank you. So for those of you in the room, there's cards around, and so if you've got questions that you want to write down and submit, I think Marge and others are collecting them. They can bring them up. I've got a few up here that I'll read. Are there any more online?
Not yet.
Okay. So I think this one might be for Mark. When the budgeted staff position becomes vacant before the end of the fiscal year, are those funds allocated to the general fund? And then there's a second part. How are those funds reallocated? Are they held for the replacement staff, or does the budget commission, council, or administrator decide how they are spent?
Yeah, so the first question was if we have a staff vacancy or we're not paying someone, is that money allocated then to the general fund? Only if that position is in the general fund. So we have a lot of different revenue sources that have a lot of strings attached to it. One fund that's most flexible is the general fund, but the money you pay for services in water and sewer, stormwater, by law, we can't move that money around and spend that on something in the general fund, in police or fire or library or parks and rec. So generally, when there is a vacancy, where whatever department that's budgeted in, you may see a savings in that department. We don't do anything right then because there are also times when unanticipated costs come up. So at the end of the fiscal year, we identify, okay, are there funds there? And if a department at times has an unanticipated need and yet they had some vacancies, they will then ask me, can I spend this money on this issue? I've done it both ways. I've said yes. I've also said no, depending on what the issue is, the priority. So those funds ultimately, anything we don't expend would roll forward and be available for future expenditure, but not just as a general fund. It has to be within the fund in which that money was budgeted. Yeah.
Thanks. So speaking of that, what percent and amount of the budget is discretionary, that is not obligated?
So I guess trying to understand what discretionary means, because again, the general fund money is the most flexible. So you could spend general fund money on, as we do now, on public safety, Parks and Rec and Library, community development. Or you could say, you know what, roads are our highest priority. We're going to take that, we're going to spend that money on roads. Of course, decisions would have to be made about cutting other services to be able to do that. Now, I've lost what the question was.
What percent and amount, so I guess the dollar amount of the budget is discretionary, i.e. not obligated?
Yeah, so within each, again, this is where discretionary. So let's use a restricted fund, water. Certainly it has to be used for purposes in water. Now, is that used to extend or repair this water line? Or is it gonna be used on a different water line? That really is a decision that I empower our department directors to make. So there's discretion in there, but it's not free money. At the budget that comes forward for the Budget Commission and the council, there's no free money floating around that's discretionary. And as I said, by the time it gets there, there have been requests that I have had to deny. So we're kind of on the opposite end of, we got extra money sitting around. We have more needs and requirements than we're able to fill. So there's not discretionary money just sitting around.
Okay. So the answer is 0% and $0.
Yeah, again, depending on how we have discretion on how we spend.
I think the question is about like, at the end, is everything allocated?
Just to add a little bit from a relative newcomer perspective, there are a number of funds, as Mark mentioned, water, stormwater maintenance, wastewater treatment, water delivery, et cetera. All of those funds are pretty much non-discretionary from the perspective of they need to be spent in that particular department, although there are discretion as to where they get spent in that area. I think theoretically, a lot of money is discretionary, except for two things. One is a significant percentage of our money, of the city's budget does go to staffing. So if you're willing, just to put it in the extreme, if we were to be able to move staffing dramatically, which is not really something that's going to happen, theoretically, there's quite a bit of discretion. It's given that we have a number of positions that have been planned for, have longevity, et cetera. There's not a lot of discretion because those positions are funded. We've already decided how to spend that. So, and I guess the economist answer is, in the long run, everything's discretionary. In the short run, not as much. And I'm sure we could probably get a more definitive answer as to what percentage of the budget is comprised of funds for which discretion is not allowed, that is spending outside of that fund's purpose, which would basically be the general fund. I'm not sure if that added anything.
I was just going to comment that in the broadest sense of the word, all of the property tax dollars that go into the general fund are, quote, discretionary, end quote. And on the basis that, based on the policies and priorities that the city council and the city staff and the citizens through their input at election time and other times have decided that, well, you know, we need to have a police department. We need to have a fire department. We need to have a parks and recs taken care of. We need a library. All of those things are important, and then we work out the budgets and do them. And when you get to a point where either the city council is talking about it at council meetings or the budget commission is talking about it at budget commission meetings, the idea is, as Mark said, there's more wants and needs, if you will, than there is money to pay for it all. And I seem to recall that most of the budget documents come with a page that says, here are all the unmet needs, you know, in terms of, and at times it's been $1 million or $2 million, and it seems to me, some years back, it was 13 million. And so if you're gonna do this, then you have to take something away from this. You know, it's reach in your pocket, when you get your monthly paycheck. What is it you want to spend your money on? Is it all discretionary or not? In the sense that you could spend it on whatever you want, it's all discretionary, but you don't really want to do it, and you can't really do that, and your landlord and mortgage holder probably, and your utility provider wouldn't appreciate you're saying, well, I thought that was discretionary, so I'd spend it on something else.
Okay, so next question. When the city has a big ticket CIP, so capital improvement project that exceeds available funds and must be postponed, how do you assure the community that it will not be postponed indefinitely?
I would say I could not assure the community that a CIP project might not be delayed indefinitely. The exception to that that I can think of would be requirements. We may have to meet some state or federal requirements regarding safe drinking water, wastewater, or stormwater, in which we are forced to do an improvement. Again, it would come down to conversations of if we have to fund this capital improvement, what are we not going to do on the operational side? Are we going to cut staff? Are we, not going to fix water line leaks? An example of water. So the big question there for projects that aren't funded is how do you try to fund those? And I will say our staff is really good at trying to pursue outside funding in the way of state grants, federal grants. And in fact, we are working with our local federal representatives staff trying to get some projects in front of them for consideration for funding because we don't have other opportunities for that. Can't assure you that a capital improvement will be done unless there's a driver, or if the community says this is a priority and we're willing to forego something else to reach that priority, then we can make those decisions.
So then I have this other question, not by the same person, but early on, it was mentioned that it might be bad that we don't have debt. Why is that?
But
How do we think of that?
yeah, and I should have explained that. And the issue there, it comes back to debt is not a bad thing.
As long as you make the payments.
As long as you can make the payments, it needs to be used carefully and strategically. The fact that we don't have any debt means we haven't been making some investments that I think we need to be making. So that's what I meant by the downside of not having debt. I think there's been some inaction that in the long run costs the city not only more money to address the issue, but we're dealing with a lot of inefficiencies and unintended consequences by not making that investment.
Okay, so that leads me to this next one, jumping around, but one way a business makes more money available is to become more efficient. Does the city think the same way?
Yes. We are, that is an ethic of mine, to drive efficiencies. And that goes back to the lack of investments that we made in ourselves that can lead to some of those efficiencies. I will say, my first full budget cycle here, I laid down a goal for our organization, and that was to cut or save $1 million annually in operating costs without reducing service levels. And so that was the challenge I put out to the department directors. And we met and actually exceeded that a little bit over a 2-year fiscal year period. Example of what we did. When I got here, each department, I'll call it the downtown departments, had their own administrative staff. And what we did is we consolidated. So we reduced the number of staff, increased efficiency for how we administer or provide administrative support for those departments. There were some rocky years there when you're changing processes for people, you're taking a little bit of control away. And frankly, we weren't very successful in the first few years. I'm happy to say we are very successful with that consolidated administration. We eliminated some management positions, which required people to take on a broader width of responsibility. And so, yes, that is something we continue to pursue, is efficiencies in processes. And I think the good thing about bringing in different department directors is they have experiences in doing things differently in different places. And that's really helpful as we try to unwind kind of the processes that get built up over years, to be looking, why are we doing things that way? How can we do them differently? So we're always looking at those opportunities. And even as vacancies come up, I ask department directors, you don't just necessarily fill that vacancy. Is there something you can do regarding how your department is organized? Is there a different way to get that service done? So we are continually looking at that.
Okay, switching gears. The city adopted a climate action plan in 2016 with goals to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. How is this plan, its metrics and achievements towards goals being reflected in the budget? So any of you who were here in 2016 or since, are there specific line items in the budget?
It's reflected. I think pulling that out line item is difficult. We do have, and this preceded the climate action plan. We have a staff person who is dedicated to organizational sustainability. And so we have an ongoing effort to look at our processes and how do we do so in a manner that's more environmentally sustainable. Where it might show up in the budget is we now are moving towards purchasing all electricity from renewable sources. There's a delta, an extra cost to do that. So that doesn't show up anywhere specifically, but it is in all our budgets. Those are ways that it's reflected in the organization. And I will say the climate action plan has two components. One is city operations and how do we operate more sustainably. And then the other piece is what can the community be doing? And that is, what are we doing as individuals in the community? What are other agencies, corporations doing in the community? And how do we incentivize them to act in a way that reduces their carbon footprint?
As a relatively new counselor, reading in detail the strategic operating plan, there's lots in the various years of the strategic operating plan that I've observed where we have made investments, as Mark pointed out, on the municipal side. In terms of sustainability, those goals are evident, and you can see how they've progressed across the years in the strategic operating plan.
Taking
I did think of one other finite
Go
thing.
ahead, no, go ahead.
Police department. we moved to purchasing hybrid police cruisers. They cost more on the front end, but obviously there's the lower carbon footprint and fuel efficiencies. Unfortunately, we're now challenged with not being able to get those from manufacturers, but there's a specific item where we paid a little more to go with hybrid police cruisers. We're also, our general fleet, we are moving all the city and general fleet, I mean, our regular cars, as those come up for renewal, we're purchasing all electric or hybrid, generally all electric. We do have 2 electric buses. We got federal funding for that. We applied for and received that. So we are building the infrastructure to support that. So again, investing in our operations that way.
Thank you. I have an online question. Is a 1-year budget typical for a city or Corvallis' size, or is a biennial more common?
It's a great segue. What we see is a trend towards biennial budgeting. And the county has that, obviously the state's on that. So generally, I think the movement is to biennial budgeting. And that is a direction where we're headed also. And something we've talked with the city council for quite a while. So this, if things go according to plan, this year will be the last year where we're on an annual budget. Then we will sync up with the state budget on a biennial budget coming up a little over a year from now.
Okay, thank you. Okay, at the last budget commission last May, in a meeting, at the last budget commission meeting in May, the commission voted to ask the city council to create a task force about the budget commission process. Could you please provide an update on this task force?
Yes, in lieu of the task force, so we did meet several on council and several on staff, myself, our finance director. And in lieu of the task force, we're trying to get at what is the question that people are wanting to know. And really the root of it, as we understood it, was how does the budget process work? How do people give input for the budget process? And the flow chart we just talked about is what came out of that discussion. So in lieu of a task force, we went through, developed the flow chart, published it, and now we're talking about it.
Okay, where is the best place where citizens can view how the city specifically spends its funds?
Specifically, well, the best place to start is the budget, and I realize it can be somewhat of an intimidating document. But what we did do,
Help you sleep.
it will. Yeah, and since they don't publish phone books anymore,
I know.
I'll pop you up if you need. Where I would start is each department has what we call a department at a glance. So it's 2-sided and it's very high level. It talks about what is the work they do, gives some of the information as far as the dollars, the revenues, the expenditures. And I would start there. And then as you have questions, certainly you can reach out to me. I can connect you with finance director or department directors if you have specific questions. There's not a place for you to go and look what is, what checks did the city cut this month. I should say one other place to look is our audited, our ACFR, and I'm at a loss to remember exactly what it is, but it's really the books. Where did we spend our money and did we meet audit guidelines? Unfortunately, we've really struggled to get our last 2022 audit completed. I won't go into all the details. We are very hopeful that will be out soon, which then soon will be followed by this ACFR document, which we will present to the city council. But that's a good high-level summary for people too.
And this document's online, right?
Yeah, budget documents online.
And I believe the finance director sends out, you can sign up to get, emails from the reports from the
Yeah.
finance director in terms of how the money is being spent, quarterly reports. They make good reading too.
Yeah, that's a good, the quarterly report is another place where you can kind of see how's the city tracking.
Okay, so if the budget is so tight, how will the city come up with all of the funding that will be required for the facilities needs that have been identified? And where will those funds come from?
Yeah, that is a conversation yet to be had. That conversation will happen not until the city council sees all so there's 4 priority facility projects we are working on right now. Police station, parks maintenance facility, what we call a civic campus, and remodel of Fire Station 1. So we are in conceptual planning for those, and that work will provide us with, we hope, a accurate cost estimate for those 4 projects. We will bring those forward to the council, those cost estimates, and then we will bring options forward for the council of, here's how you might fund one or all these projects. So again, we will identify the different levers that could be pulled. We will, as I said, we will look to pursue outside funding from granting agencies anywhere we can. But ultimately, the community will have to pay for it, and how that rolls out depends on the methodology that the council ultimately chooses.
So I'll add my 2 cents to this, since this is something that's a particular passion of mine, and I hope that all 9 councilors share this passion, is that we have a lot of investment we need to make in our infrastructure. We have facilities that have not had investment that we're talking about, as Mark mentioned. We have regulation coming from the federal and state level we have to respond to. I think it's incumbent upon the council to have some serious and difficult policy discussions about where does revenue come from, not just this year, but out into the future. What does that mean for rates? What does that mean for growing our economic base? What are our goals to make that occur? How do we balance all this all out into the future? How do we take the existing budget and make trade-offs? As Mark mentioned, it's not like we have anything in the budget that is a bad idea, but we have to prioritize. And I think prioritization is a difficult thing for people to, it's a challenging thing for folks to talk about. I think that's something that we as a council need to address and set goals and objectives for. We need to spend X% of the budget on this priority. We only spend Y now, it needs to be X in the future. And we also obviously still need to focus on things like operational efficiency. But I think those are the policy level discussions that I think we need to have as a council. And I think that's a challenge for us. It's not, we should not be deciding things on an individual basis. We have to take a holistic view and understand where we're going off into the future. Because, I mean, I have a lot of friends that ask me, or, how's it on city council? And I just like to give some fun facts. I mean, in rough terms, we have about 220 miles of piping to get fresh water into your home. We have enough in the budget to every year to replace about 7,000 feet of that, or 5,000 feet of that. Right? Well, you don't have to be a math genius to figure out that we have a lot of piping that will not get replaced. But if you look at the age of our piping, a lot of it's quite old. I think if we fail to deliver fresh water to folks, that's kind of a high priority. So those are challenges we have to address. We need to be able to create the capability to deliver upon the services that our citizens, our community rely upon. And I think that's the challenge for us. So I'm very passionate about, we need to have these tough policy decisions about where we're going to spend money and where we're going to spend.
So that's a good segue to this next question. So how would the community go about changing an issue in the CIP? So
I'm sorry.
how does the community weigh in on those priorities? Then? Any of the council weighs them? How does the community weigh in on the priorities?
I'll go back to the most important thing. In November, there'll be an election of 9 councilors. If you want to make change the council to however it is you want to make it change. And then, between now and November, talk to those 9 councilors and tell them what's important to them. It's so much easier today because of email and text than it was back in the 1980s when I was a council member and mayor in this city of Morgan Hill, when all people could do was call and leave me a voicemail or interrupt me at dinner with my wife when we're out at the restaurant or grab me when I'm coaching my son's soccer team and say, can we talk to you about, which of course you can do that too. If you'd like to know Tony's favorite restaurants, shoot me an email and I'll tell you where to find it.
Okay.
Yeah, and I will say again, if you provide input on the CIP, certainly that gets in front of the council and can be part of that conversation.
Okay.
Same with the strategic operation plan. Yep.
All right, I'm gonna take one from online. Does the large proportion of business vacancies downtown in any way impact the city's budget? Do property taxes vary by zoning and or vacancy? And has the city council considered vacancy taxes? If it has the authority to do so.
Yeah, vacancies do not have a direct impact on the city's budget. Where it potentially could impact us was if we saw a significant economic downturn. You have a lot of vacant properties. Those property owners could petition the county assessor to reduce their assessed value, which then we would see an impact. But that has not happened in Corvallis. There have been a few properties that have been reassessed lower, but it hasn't happened significantly regarding that sort of business. Prior to me starting here, I don't remember, it was 2011, Hewlett Packard had a significant reduction in their assessed value. That assessment isn't done locally, that's done at the state level. So there was no local control, but that had a significant impact on Corvallis's budget, school district's budget, and the county's budget.
Okay, I think we have a question from the room who actually wants to, it's about limited industrial tax base. Would you like to add, do you want?
All the same line as the comment here. Corvallis has.
Can we get you a mic? Wait, can we get you a microphone or do you wanna?
Yeah.
Or I can read your card, kind of.
Yeah, well, Corvallis actually has a declining tax base for industrial businesses, like Hewlett Packard is an example. If you look at Technology Way, all those businesses that left town is owned by the city, the state, and OSU. So the question is, what can we do to improve our industrial tax base? Because as a matter of fact, suburban communities do not fund themselves enough to pay for the services that everybody wants. And so industries come and help us pay those taxes. So what can we do in that area?
We only have one mic. Thank you.
So Councilor Cadena did talk about growing the economic base, and that certainly would be part of that. Is how do you attract and retain and allow current industries and businesses to grow? Growth and industry hasn't always been looked on positively in this community, but it is true. Industrial property pays a high rate of taxes, and they have a low demand for services. So if you're looking just from an economic standpoint, they're a great partner, a great neighbor to have. And I do lament the changeover out in the industrial park where Oregon State, the county, have been buying up property out there. Unfortunately, I don't control that. But we do, so we have an economic development office jointly funded through Benton County. And our focus is going to shift a little bit. We have a new staff member there in trying to do that retention and attraction of industrial customers. It is a challenging game to play. Most of these industries are coming and looking for tax breaks or other concessions. So there's a lot at play, and we're trying to balance bringing those companies in without giving away the farm, so to speak, without injuring the rest of the community. One of the assets the city has is an industrial park out at the airport. Interestingly, it's the city airport, but it's not inside the city. We are looking to annex that into the city, which then we would receive some incremental taxes on that, and continue to look at other ways for us to market that property for industrial development. So again, industrial development done in the right places and in the right way can really be beneficial for our community.
Yeah, I think one of the things that I think I've met with the newly hired economic development manager, and I'm really interested to see what comes out of that department. I think one of the things we have OSU here, there are quite a few businesses that get created that would love to stay here. I think there's a lot we could do, and many of those may not be asking for some of the big tax breaks that some folks want. But I think there's a lot we can do that would make it easier to, and from a business perspective, easier means faster, faster to develop industrial property. Because our competition is other states where even if you're not looking for tax breaks, if you go to another state and they say you can turn a shovel in 5 months, that's a lot more impressive. If we can look at what we can do locally to be able to either have a ready property, either buildings that already exist or land that is easily developable, I think that's an opportunity for us. So I'm very interested to see what comes out of the economic development and what we can do to target specific types of development we'd like to have. So before that.
Okay. And I think just to Councilor Cadena's point there, I have experience in another community where the community proactively put in infrastructure, public infrastructure. So there's an investment, a risk, so to speak, that the community makes so that businesses can locate there. The infrastructure's there. Time often is one of the major issues there. One of the things that is outside our control are wetland regulations. And oftentimes that can really slow a project down and makes it challenging to be able to respond to opportunities for development.
Okay, well, we're coming to the end of our time. I have one question left, and I'm going to ask each of you to answer it in your own way. What budget issues do you see coming in the future? It's a very broad question. Answer it however you wish. We have about 5 minutes.
I think the big issues ahead are probably the same ones that we continue to struggle with. So when I first moved to the state, I remember Senator Moore said that Oregon has a broken tax system compared to some other states. And I remember my early years on the Budget Commission, and the Finance Director Nancy Brewer would always say, this is a real challenge. Property taxes go up about 3% a year max, but the city's operating expenses, because of union contracts, because of PERS, because of competition for better employees, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, goes up about 5% a year. That math doesn't work. And of course, it's a part of why Mark's pursuit of more legs on the stool. You know, that makes it possible to do a bit, but the challenge is the desire for more services and the need for the biggest expense, staff, people. You know, the city is a service business. That the cost of people is beyond the level of money that's coming in. It just doesn't work. And until you find a way to make more money come in, industrial growth, economic growth, you know, and the gentleman who made the comment about residential doesn't do it is absolutely true. That's not where the money is. That's where the need is, where the demand is.
Yeah, I think striking a similar tone there is this whole issue of I think difficult conversations about wants and needs and what is the community willing to pay for. And so those are conversations about priorities. The revenue pie, even if we add other legs, if we look at different ways for funding things, in general, that money comes out of the same pocket. I think the one exception is, how do you get in the pocket of those who aren't paying property taxes? And we're trying to do that. And I shouldn't laugh, but it truly is. There are services being provided. How do we distribute the cost of those services fairly? So really that equation of what the community wants, what we're required to do, balancing that with the revenues we have, and that's on ongoing operations as well as significant capital investments in our infrastructure and facilities. So that's the biggest thing facing the city. Probably the toughest conversations I think we're in for.
So I have kind of a dual approach to this. One is on the one hand, there's a lot of need and concern about what we're going to be able to do, what the needs are for the future. But I'm also optimistic because I think this is sort of a math problem that can be addressed, maybe not overnight, but over time. I think a couple of things are going to be a real challenge for us. Is that there are some basic things that people expect in the city: clean water, compliance with environmental law regarding wastewater treatment, stormwater management. A lot of our functioning streets, public safety, all these things that are fundamental. And in some areas we've made investments, and in other areas we're very far behind. I think that'll be a challenge for us. I think there's lots that can be done to address that. Potentially different revenue sources, economic development, smart economic growth, I think makes a lot of sense. But I think more importantly than that is good, solid communication and engagement with the community to understand what the current state of things are. I think it's critically important. There are lots of folks that come to council and testify. There are thousands more that never come to council. And I mean, when I walked my ward, there are a lot of people that I talk to that I know they're never going to come to council and testify. But I have to represent their interests and concerns. There's lots of folks in Ward 9 that are retired, working class. We have to represent all the concerns, and I think that's going to be a challenge for us, is how do we provide the things that are most critical, that our community needs first, and then second, and then third, and then how we're going to be creative about being able to minimize the burden on the folks that are already here, and maybe grow our economic base. I think it's a solvable problem, but it is a challenge.
Okay, well, I think we're at time, right? So thank you, all three of you very much, Kurt, Tony, Mark. Thank you all for the good questions on the end and then Susan. Dr. Connie.
So thank you, Councilor Yee and panelists. I think it was very informative. And we hope to see you at a upcoming league event. The next one is February 6th, and it's the second of the Know Your City series. Thank you.